The Washington Post has just broken news that Robert Mueller, the special counsel investigating the Russian attack on our election in 2016 and whether or not the Trump campaign was involved in that, Robert Mueller and his investigators, according to the Washington Post, have obtained a personal letter written from President Trump to President Vladimir Putin. A typed letter that reportedly has a handwritten postscript on the bottom. I don't know why Robert Mueller's team has been able to obtain this document. If you think about it, a typewritten letter with a handwritten postscript, that presumably only exists for the person who received it, right? But Mueller somehow obtained it. Anyway, the Washington Post has just broken that story. We've got one of the reporters who broke that news with us joining us in just a couple of minutes. So that, just breaking tonight, we've got that ahead. In addition to that, I have some great news for you. You are getting a new yacht. It is a gigantic yacht. It's apparently worth $250 million, not $250,000, $250 million, $250 million. This is the kind of yacht that's so big and so expensive. It turns out there's a person in the world who posts online under the name Dutch Mega Yachts. And this person has put slow-mo pictures of your new yacht on the Dutch Mega Yachts page on YouTube, and the pictures of your new yacht are so alluring, so inanimate object sexy, that whoever this is has posted these pictures of your new yacht on YouTube, I kid you not, with a Barry White soundtrack. This is a thing that exists. This is did you ever see the Steve Martin remake of Pink Panther? And somebody says to him, "Are you ever lonely?" And he says, "Not since the internet." My whole favorite part about this is that this Barry White soundtrack, sexy slow-mo footage of the yacht is not just from anywhere. This is DutchMegaYachts.com. So their sexy pictures of the yacht have Barry White singing sexily to it while it sails like through the cargo container loading area of the industrial port city of Rotterdam. Baby, baby. That's your yacht. And that's a big crane. I love this so much. Look, with the cargo container. The world is full of amazing people who do amazing things, mostly online. People have all sorts of feelings that you wouldn't expect. But the reason that we went looking for this footage today is because that yacht in that Barry White-themed slow-mo movie, that yacht does now belong to you. We also have slightly less glamorous footage of this same yacht being boarded by local law enforcement officers and FBI agents this past week. In Bali, in Indonesia. This new yacht that you own, it is a $250 million yacht. It's called the Equanimity. It has now been seized by the FBI, by U.S. federal agents, and it is being handed over to the U.S. government. So congratulations, U.S. taxpayer. Hope you like your new boat. I should also tell you that this week, you also just became the proud owner of $60 million worth of proceeds that were earned by the film Wolf of Wall Street. The producers of Wolf of Wall Street have now surrendered $60 million of what that film made to the U.S. government. So you own those proceeds now, too. You apparently are also about to become the owner of some of the proceeds of the movie Daddy's Home, starring Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg, and you are also about to become the owner of some of the proceeds from the movie Dumb and Dumber 2, which stars a car that looks like a dog. In the case of those two movies, though, unlike Wolf of Wall Street, where we know it's $60 million that you're getting, I don't know exactly how much of the proceeds you're about to get from Dumb and Dumber 2 and the dad one, but you're about to get some of it as a U.S. taxpayer. And the reason you are now the owner of all this new stuff you didn't own before is because of this guy. Not the one on the left, the other guy, who is the Prime Minister of Malaysia. If you are the Prime Minister of a country and hundreds of millions of dollars suddenly show up in your personal bank account, you better have a really good explanation for that, right? I mean, prime minister jobs do tend to come with a nice salary, but not a hundreds of millions of dollars overnight kind of salary. A couple of years ago, though, somebody put almost $700 million into the bank account of the Prime Minister of Malaysia. And he really had no good explanation for it. For months, he just said it was nobody's business. It was his money. He said these allegations, these insinuations that there was anything inappropriate about this sudden infusion of $700 million into his private bank account, he said this was just his political opponents trying to undermine him. There was nothing to see here. Then his own attorney general and his deputy prime minister started saying, actually, you know, maybe the prime minister should answer questions about this mysterious $700 million. The prime minister reacted to that by firing both of them. He fired his deputy prime minister and he fired his attorney general. Prime minister then appointed a new attorney general to look at the circumstances of that money turning up in his bank account. And that new hand-picked attorney general looked into it and declared that really it was all fine. Nobody had done anything wrong. And that's when they decided what their public explanation would be for where that money came from. Their explanation was that that money, that $700 million, it was a present. It was a no-strings-attached gift for the prime minister from the Saudi royal family. Their line was that there was a Saudi prince who decided that he liked the prime minister of Malaysia, and no occasion really. He just decided that the prime minister could probably do with $700 million, so he gave it to him, free for nothing. When that's your good-sounding explanation, when that's your everything is fine, nothing to see here excuse, that a Saudi prince just dropped it off one day and you don't know why. If that's the good-sounding explanation, you know the bad-sounding explanation must be really, really, really bad. Well, sure enough, a few months later, the United States Department of Justice filed a 250-page complaint alleging that that $700 million cash that turned up mysteriously in the personal bank account of the Malaysian prime minister, that was just a fraction of the proceeds of a gigantic heist, a giant act of thievery, a corruption scheme in which the prime minister and his family and his associates stole billions of dollars from the Malaysian government. $4.5 billion they stole in cash from the Malaysian government. And some of it they just stacked up in bank accounts, but mostly they laundered it all over the world, including in the United States, which is why the U.S. Justice Department brought this case, even though the money was stolen from the people of Malaysia. And the list of stuff that they spent this stolen money on, it's a ridiculous list of stuff. The prime minister's family and friends bought penthouses in New York City, they bought mansions in Beverly Hills, they bought yachts, yes, yachts, Barry White style and otherwise. They bought Picasso paintings. They did a lot of gambling. The prime minister's wife mysteriously ended up with a lot of ridiculous jewelry. The prime minister's stepson used a bunch of the money to finance some Hollywood movies, including The Wolf of Wall Street, Daddy's Home, and Dumb and Dumber 2. All through a company called Red Granite Pictures. If you actually watch the trailers for any of those Hollywood movies, you'll see a splash page at the beginning of all those trailers for Red Granite Pictures. U.S. Justice Department says that was the money laundering vehicle for some of these gazillions of dollars that were stolen from the Malaysian government by the prime minister, his family, and their associates. And yes, that's sort of a bonkers list of things to spend money on, particularly if you're trying to stay low-key and get away with this kind of theft, right? Ostentatious much? But in a way, if you think about it, you've sort of got to spend the money on something. It's hard to explain hundreds of millions of dollars, let alone billions of dollars, just sitting in bank accounts. Maybe it's better to convert it to real-world saleable assets. Convert it even into assets that might make a profit. If Dumb and Dumber 2 is anywhere near as good as the original, it might be a great investment. Well, now the United States has started the process of seizing the assets that are believed to have been bought by the criminals who carried off this scheme. The stuff that was stolen with Malaysian government money, U.S. federal official, the FBI, started last summer going after the real estate. They made Leonardo DiCaprio hand over the Picasso that he was given as a gift by the good people who turned up with barrels full of cash to finance the Wolf of Wall Street. And the Justice Department has continued to pursue its investigation into this huge heist, this massive theft of billions of dollars in government funds, which ended up resulting in the purchase of all of these things. So a few things here. Number one, congratulations on your new yacht. It is lovely, even to the point where it's attractive. Very. Two, yes, it was strange when President Trump hosted the Malaysian Prime Minister at the White House just a few months ago in September, in the middle of this big investigation. White House never mentioned the federal agents who were pursuing the Malaysian Prime Minister as a multi-billion-dollar thief in this gigantic scheme. There was actually worry in advance of the Malaysian Prime Minister visiting Trump that if on this trip to the White House, the Prime Minister's wife wore some specific jewelry she is known to possess, federal agents might be put in the awkward position of having to take that jewelry off her. Like maybe when she was leaving the White House grounds, or maybe at their hotel. Naturally, the Malaysian Prime Minister and his whole entourage, including his wife, they all stayed at our president's hotel in Washington while they were here for that visit, which means that government funds that rightfully belong to the people of Malaysia have now gone into the pocket of the Malaysian Prime Minister himself, but also into the pocket of our president. Nice. No wonder they got along so well. So the ongoing Justice Department investigation and the seizure of all these luxury items bought with the stolen funds, that makes that White House visit a little weird. Now it's getting weirder, because the Wall Street Journal has now obtained documents, emails, that appear to show that a top Republican fundraiser close to President Donald Trump was in negotiations to earn tens of millions of dollars if the U.S. Justice Department dropped its investigation into a multi-billion-dollar graft scandal involving a Malaysian state investment fund. Quote, in emails dated during the past year, Elliot Broidy and his wife discussed setting up a consulting contract with a Malaysian businessman at the center of a multi-billion-dollar graft scandal. Incidentally, I should tell you the specific businessman we're talking about here, who they were trying to set up some sort of contract with. He is the guy who is technically the owner of your new yacht, the Equanimity, this yacht that FBI agents just seized in this case. FBI agents have found the yacht, but the guy himself, who is technically the owner, who is allegedly part of this big theft scheme with the Prime Minister, that guy has gone missing. And they are now looking for him right now. But according to the Wall Street Journal, within the last year, these emails that the Journal has obtained show that a Trump fundraiser was pursuing a draft business agreement with that guy, the guy who's now a fugitive, right? The guy who owns that yacht and can't be found. Elliot Broidy and his wife were pursuing a deal in which he and his wife would get paid a cool $75 million if they were able to succeed in getting the Justice Department to drop this Malaysian case. This is weird, right? This massive corruption case, massive heist, multi-billion-dollar scheme, and Trump is hosting the Prime Minister at the center of it in the middle of this big case by the Justice Department. And the main business guy, who also seems to have benefited from it, at least it got him a $250 million yacht, he's involved with one of Trump's fundraisers, who's asking for a $75 million payment to get the U.S. Justice Department to drop this case against him. It's a strange story, right? Who knows where this one ends? There's another story in the Wall Street Journal tonight about the president's lawyers making an offer to the special counsel Robert Mueller. Quote, President Donald Trump's lawyers are seeking to renegotiate a deal with special counsel Robert Mueller that uses an interview with the president as leverage to spur a conclusion to Mueller's investigation. The president's lawyers are reportedly considering, quote, suggesting a deadline of 60 days for Mueller to wrap up his investigation. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think anybody thinks that's going to happen. I mean, not only are the president's lawyers not in a position to be laying down demands at this point, with at least 4 guilty pleas in this case already, at least there may be more that are not yet unsealed, with 2 criminal trials on dozens of felony charges due to start this summer and into the fall. But in addition to the fact that the president's legal team wouldn't seem to have the leverage to demand that Mueller do anything, let alone wrap things up quickly for them now, frankly, we're still at the part of this scandal where we keep meeting new characters. We keep starting new episodes. We all just got a new yacht. Come on. And this guy, Elliot Broidy, the Trump fundraiser, who now turns up in the middle of this weird Malaysia heist, we first met him in the middle of the presidential campaign, May 2016, when we marveled, at least I marveled on the air, at the fact that the RNC had just named this guy Broidy the vice chair of the Trump Victory Fund for the Republican National Committee. I marveled at that on the air because the thing at the time he was most famous for was one of the most astonishing bribery cases ever in a U.S. state that is so corrupt already, it's hard to be astonished by anything here. In 2009, this guy, Elliot Broidy, pled guilty to paying an amazing series of bribes to officials in New York State. He was bribing those officials so they'd give his financial firm a piece of a big New York State-controlled pile of money. They'd give his firm a piece of the pension fund for state workers. Elliot Broidy paid these state officials $1 million in bribes. He paid, the bribes were incredible. He paid an all-expense-paid luxury vacation for the state comptroller and his family, first-class airfare to Israel, luxury suites at the King David Hotel in Jerusalem, a chauffeured car and driver, helicopter tours. I mean, that was the bribe he paid to the comptroller and his family. To the deputy comptroller, he got his brother a $400,000 Tony Soprano-style no-show job. For the chief of staff to the comptroller, he slipped over $100 grand to the guy's girlfriend. All these bribes, it was all spelled out in the indictment when all these state officials had to go to jail for taking all of these bribes. Elliot Broidy is the guy who bribed them. He bribed them to get business for his firm. It worked. His firm got the business. He personally made like $18 million off this scheme, which is a good investment if he only had to put out $1 million. The only problem was they caught him. And in the end, it was the state officials who he bribed who ended up going to prison. Elliot Broidy himself flipped and went state's evidence. He pled guilty to a felony charge of rewarding official misconduct, so he was a felon. Ultimately, in reward for his cooperation, he got to withdraw his felony plea and, in the end, just admit to a misdemeanor. Because he flipped and weaseled on the people who he paid the bribes to, those were the people who went to jail while he didn't. And then the Republican Party named him vice chair of the Donald Trump Victory Fund for the RNC, of all the people in the world. His felony bribery charges weren't even that long ago. That was late 2009. Well, now that the Trump campaign is over, Elliot Broidy has since become the deputy finance chairman of the RNC, working in Steve Wynn's shop there. One of the other deputy finance chairmen is Michael Cohen, president's personal lawyer, now known for the porn star payment scandal. How you doing staying out of the Trump scandals, RNC? Now their deputy finance chairman, Mr. Broidy, has just taken a hard turn into the middle of the Robert Mueller investigation. A few days ago, we learned that Mueller and his team of prosecutors have a new cooperating witness in their investigation. His name is George Nader. He's an advisor to the government of the United Arab Emirates. Mueller's team is reportedly interested in what Nader has to say as a cooperating witness because they're investigating, quote, the influence of foreign money on Trump's political activities. Mueller's prosecutors have reportedly asked witnesses about the possibility that George Nader has funneled money from the United Arab Emirates into President Trump's political efforts. It's illegal, of course, for there to be foreign money in U.S. politics. It's illegal for any American to facilitate that. So Mueller is reportedly looking into that issue using this cooperating witness, George Nader. This cooperating witness, George Nader, turns out to be in business with Elliot Broidy, the same guy who's reportedly been offering to get rid of the Justice Department's Malaysia investigation for a $75 million fee to him and his wife. The guy who's a New York State pension fund bribery felon, this magnificent specimen of civic mindedness who's been named a deputy finance chairman of the RNC. He surfaces now in the reporting about this new cooperating witness helping the Mueller investigation examine the possibility of foreign money flowing into the Trump political operation. Because Elliot Broidy has reportedly been giving George Nader detailed briefings on all the work he's been doing at the White House, including meetings with President Trump, to pursue the foreign policy aims of this country that George Nader works for, UAE, and to try to turn the Trump administration against UAE's rivals in the Middle East. Elliot Broidy himself is someone who has recently received hundreds of millions of dollars from UAE. Quote, after the inauguration, George Nader became friendly with Elliot Broidy and introduced him to the Crown Prince of UAE. Broidy's company then signed contracts with the UAE worth several $100 million. I wonder if they know he once pled guilty to a felony. And this is all getting pretty ugly pretty fast. This old child pornography indictment against George Nader surfaced last night in a report from Natasha Bertrand at Atlantic Magazine. George Nader was charged with receiving and possessing child porn. Police recovered a big trove of it from his bedroom in Washington, D.C., but the charges were eventually dismissed because of a procedural problem with the search warrant in that case. For Elliot Broidy's part, he says the reason his emails are now turning up in news reports all over the world, including the one where he puts a $75 million price tag on getting the Justice Department to drop its case about that heist in Malaysia. He says the reason his emails are turning up all over the place in all sorts of news reports now is because he says he's been hacked by a foreign government and he's the real victim here. And it's hard to know how to weigh any of these claims or why this stuff is coming out now, but just step back from this for a second. Just this week, we learned about a new cooperating witness and a new line of inquiry into foreign money allegedly coming into the Trump political operation. Apparently, they've had this guy since January. We're just finding out about it now, including his ties to the deputy finance chair of the RNC. And a Trump campaign aide named Sam Nunberg did just do 7 hours of testimony today before Mueller's grand jury in Washington, D.C. Apparently, the grand jury is still getting a workout. And the freaking Washington Post just reported tonight that Robert Mueller has obtained a personal letter from Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin from 2013, a typed letter with a handwritten note from Trump below the typed part. How on earth have Mueller and his prosecutors obtained that document? So yeah, this is cute. This is cute tonight. Trump lawyers seek deal with Mueller to speed end of Russia probe. That's cute. I'm thinking probably not. We are still meeting new people. We are still winning new prizes. This just doesn't feel over at all.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.